How did you do it, Mr. Eldagsen?
Well, it depends on what you would like to know. How my history as an artist over the years. I started as a teenager with drawings, and I loved paintings. Photography came when I was 17, 18, photographing friends. And I applied at art school with my drawings, got accepted because of my drawings. And then while I was a student, I somehow ended up in the class of photography. I just went to the professor, showed him my work, and he said, "You come to my class. In 2 weeks we go to Prague," and then I was part of it. And I did photography predominantly. From photography I got an interest in moving images because I had ideas that needed a development over time. And I remember when I was a student, at some point I thought, am I studying the right thing? Wouldn't it be better to go into theater? And I tried to combine all of it in what I was doing, and I was focusing very early on staged photography and staged video. So there was a little bit of theater implied. I started with video in the mid-90s with Super 8 and then VHS, and got one of the first mini DV cameras at the end of the 90s that did cost a lot of money, and experimented. And I decided at some point in video only to work with a fixed camera on a tripod, like what you're recording right now. It's just the performance that happens in front of the camera. I didn't want to have camera shots, different camera angles, editing, because I couldn't afford more than one camera. Often I hired cameras later to have a certain quality. So everything I was doing was one shot. And the only edit then was kind of like hidden, creating a loop. And working with photography and video somehow got me 10, 15 years ago into installations. I wanted to create work that is more immersive. Maybe here the idea of theater returned. And I could print images on huge wallpaper, work with spaces. I always was fascinated by making work for specific spaces. It created new ideas. And then after the pandemic, AI came, and I got interested from the very first moment. And in 22 I did a workshop by David Fati, a French photo artist who experimented with AI. And in those 3 hours I got first impression of what it is, and it felt like magic. I remember I worked with a model called Google Diffusion on Google Colab. It took 20 minutes for the image to generate. It was an early diffusion model, and it felt like old school photography, being in a dark room and watching the image appear. And he recommended to get on the waiting list for DALL-E 2. That was supposed to be the next big thing, and I got onto the waiting list with 3 different identities and emails and got accepted before him. And from this moment in summer 22 I was basically hooked. It was very fascinating to be able to create images with text. So you can work purely out of your imagination. I always did staged work, so now I was independent of performers, actors, locations, outside temperature, climate, weather, day and night time. And I just love doing it, and I have been doing it since 4 years now. When I was a student, I was having 2 semesters in film class, and there I started with Super 8. So it was very analog, hands-on, cutting with scissors, gluing with tape, and creating your first experiences with film, editing, narration, but it was very basic. And I was also very late in working with computers. When I finished school in '89, there were already classes in school where you could do like programming in the early days, but none of my friends had it. My family had no computers. There was no open door for me that I could go through. And it just happened in 96, 97, when I moved together with my girlfriend who had a computer, that I started to work with them. You have to imagine that until 97, I was writing all the essays and all the stuff you needed to do for university with a typewriter, and correcting all the mistakes with little white paint. But through my partner and a friend of hers who was a nerd, I learned a lot. Yeah, he was teaching me everything I needed to know about computers and software, and got me the cracked Photoshop versions and all of that. For years, he was the person to go to when I had a problem. I asked him what kind of technology I need. I was living in Australia between 2003 and 2009, and I said, what kind of laptop do I buy? And he said, get an IBM ThinkPad. And I'm still, well, IBM is dead now, but I'm still having a ThinkPad, yeah, because his recommendation was great, and I could always count on it, yeah, to work with it. The irony is that in the technology I used, I was never at the forefront. I realized what was happening, but I was not interested in technology, but more in timeless topics. And so any camera, photo or video would be okay. And but I love technology. I went to all the media art festivals, and I realized that here it is about technology. How can you use the latest technology in an artistic means? That was never my interest. I didn't consider myself to be a media artist to make works on a meta level. I just use technology as a different way of creating images and moving images. For me, it's more like a pencil, a camera, a brush, a computer. It's a tool. It's never about the tool, what I do. And ironically enough is that in the last 4 years, I am at the forefront now. Yeah, the amount of knowledge I have about this technology in the background, how it works, who it creates, the companies involved. I never had this before in any technology, but this is my full-time job now as an AI expert, artist, teacher. All of it is an important part of what I do, and it intersects. But it's the first time really that I'm in technology on this level. So what I do is I'm a creative partner of many of the big companies, from OpenAI to Runway to ByteDance. That means I get the models first. I'm a beta tester. I give feedback. I see and meet the programmers, the people who work on it on the company, and I see the development. I compare all the models for my workshops. Anyone can come to me with a problem and says, this is what I would like to create in AI video, and I can tell you which models to use and to combine. And it is complex. I would like to go back to compare how it is working with AI today to how it is to work with media in the past. I have applied for a professorship at TU Dortmund, and this is called AI, multimedia, and AI and multimedia in the arts. And I'm on the shortlist. I was invited 4 months ago, yeah, to present myself and ideas. And there I said, multimedia is a very old term. It just means that you have multiple medias involved in what you do. And I said, when I was in my early 20s, I was in the class of intermedia at the Academy of Fine Art in Prague. And there, if you combine multimedia to intermedia, intermedia is combining them, linking them, yeah, looking at the intersections. And now I would say what we have with AI is a meta medium. And for me, that is latent space. This is the totality of the training data, which consists of all digital media. And what you can do now is translate from one media to another. And that means with one and the same text prompt, you can generate a text file, an audio file, a video file, 3D file, any digital file you want. And the role of the artist today is to be a navigator. If you see latent space as a huge ocean to discover, in the past, all the media and all the different topics you could subject were like, you could study were like islands. Yeah, you are on the photo island and you learn how cameras, lenses work, you learn about digital and analog, and then you build your house, your castle, your farm, but you're on the photo island. But now in the age of AI, it's less about settling down on an island, it's about settling down on a boat and to navigate between the islands. And this needs a new skill for artists because the production part can be outsourced. But at the same time, in order to generate ideas and direct the AI to produce, you need to have a knowledge of the media. And then in order to evaluate the outcome, to fine-tune the outcome, to start again, you need to have knowledge in the media as well. So that knowledge is not obsolete. It's just that you need it in different levels in the workflow, in the first part and in the last part. This might change in the future because all the companies are working on outsourcing the prompting, which has started 2.5 years ago. And now they are starting to outsource the evaluation to agents. So that opens up a field in the future where the collaboration between humans and AI for me is set, but it's a spectrum. On one hand, you will still have artists that say, I don't need AI. And you have artists that work conceptually and say, I had to do the kickoff and everything else should be done by an autonomous agent. And in between, you have the whole spectrum of collaboration. But that process is complex. It's not just one workflow, one prompt. The latest work I've done on the video work of Francis Bacon complaining about AI was 10 different AIs, 10 different steps. First, I created a monologue. In his style, what is he complaining about? What is the difference between his work and what AI can simulate? You get all these texts from AI, but it's never good enough. You need to edit. In each version you get from the AI, there's one sentence that is strong. You need to identify this. You need to do the patchwork. Then you have the monologue. Then it's about researching Francis Bacon, his work, his life, getting reference images of the studio, of himself. I watched many documentaries. I wanted to get a feeling for the personality, researching his life. How did he paint? He did smoke, he did drink. What did he drink? He was listening to music. What kind of music? So all of this became the background for me to generate images of him in the studio. Painting, destroying his work, screaming, drinking, smoking, all of this. Then those images were edited into different scenes, that were in sync with the monologue. Then those images were animated. So you have to tell the AI, okay, he's sitting there, he's smoking. What is he doing the next 15 seconds? What is happening? So these are the scenes you generate. And then you do a first rough edit, putting it all together. And you realize there is no flow in the beginning. This part works well. I need to have more material of him smoking, drinking, singing, dancing, whatever. You go back to the AI, I also generated a classical song that is accompanied that he's listening to while he's painting. And then in the process you get ideas. And so the creative process is not that different. I need to have all of these experiments to focus on the idea, to streamline what I was doing. For an example, when I started, there was one image of Francis Bacon with the peaks, and then that peak became more and more important, and it became a symbol that reappeared. And at some point, I thought, his studio is so messy, there's so much paper lying around, and if he's smoking, he will set it on fire. So I generated him dropping the cigarette and stuff burning. And then I thought, okay, now I have to get rid of the fire. How does he extinguish the fire? So he was drinking red wine. He can use red wine, he can use champagne, he can piss on it. So I generated all those versions and later chose the one that was the best. And in this version, the AI generated a hole in the wooden floor. That was not part of my prompt. But then I say, well, this is great. There's a hole in the floor. There's something appearing. What about the pig? And then you think, what is actually below the studio? So there's this element of improvisation in the process of reacting to something is not new for me. When I was staging video or images, it was exactly like this. You have a rough idea, you have a location, you go out there with models, and then you just start. And it is going to lead you somewhere else because you react to what is happening. And I see the same with AI. To finish the description of the workflow with the Francis Bacon video, when I've done the first cut, the first edit, generated more material, rearranged the order, improved the edit multiple times, adding new sound levels. So the AI is generating sound with the video, but because I've been working with video for so long and using freesound.org.com, this open source platform, I've been using for 2 decades. So it's great. And then I realized I need additional sounds. I want a background sound of London, of Big Ben. I want to have the sound of somebody walking up and down a wooden hallway. I want to have a sound of a pig. I want to have a sound of a fox who is also in the video. And then I go back to the old school sound database and add this in the edit. Once the edit is finished, you need to have an extra loop because AI, when I was doing it early 26, has no consistency in generating voices. It's possible to have a consistency in the personality, in the character, but not in the voice. That means you have to use an extra AI voice generator and streamline, put all the different voices in there and give them one and the same character. So that's an additional workflow. At the end, the whole video needs to be upscaled in size from usually half high definition to 4K. So these are all different steps, and if you count it together, it's 10 different AIs that are used in the workflow, and it takes time. I've been working on this over half a year, but if I count it together, it's possibly a month. Sometimes I was stuck and I just had it rest and had different deadlines, but it's nothing compared to the old days. 10 years ago, I did the last big video work for Arte, the TV station. It was called Super High. It was a mockumentary casting show on getting high with no drugs. It was candidates that show alternative methods of getting high, which is work. moving your body, breathing techniques, whirling dervishes. So I had to find the students that were young and needed the money. They had to do all the performances. My friend was playing the host, asking, what are you going to present? How high do you think you will become? They did a performance, and then later they were interviewed. What happened? How do you feel now? So all of this was pre-recorded. And then later I found a jury who was willing to be a jury under the influence of drugs, responding to what the other were doing without drugs. Just setting up that shoot was a hell of a work. I had a doctor friend of mine. I tried to make it as safe as possible. I tried to find friends in Berlin that say, I've been using recreational drugs for weekends forever. I have it totally under control. And then I said, okay, what do you want? I don't know where to buy it. Here's the money. And we had a one shoot only. And all of this was basically covered by Arte because of the producer saying, we don't tell what's real and what's not. It's a mockumentary casting show. But I worked on this 2.5 years. It was 7 months editing, 40 minutes piece. And because there is so much happening in parallel, in the end I had a 16:9, but there are 5 screens in one. It's miniatures where you zoom in, zoom out, so you don't have to see the whole 5 to 10 minutes performance. You see it just small, and you zoom in and out before and after. And the jury comes in whenever they want to say something. So after this 2.5 years working with Super High, I said, no more video. It's eating my lifetime. I go back to photography. This is instant gratification. I was shooting at night for 15 years. I go out Berlin Mitte in summer, have 3 hours out there, let myself be surprised, come home with 1 or 2 images, have a beer in the end. It was great. So I stopped with video. And now the irony is with AI, I'm back. Because all the problems I had before with video are solved. I don't need a budget anymore. Yeah? I'm not dependent on locations, on models, on technology, on all the outside weather conditions. And only my imagination and the knowledge of the tools is the limit. That means if I would like to come up with 17th century stone well in Portugal, which is half filled with water and with different stuff, and imagine figures being in there doing a performance or fight, I can just do it like I did in one of the last video works. I could not produce that with real material. That is the beauty about AI. AI is a big advantage for people with experience. And I tell this every time. The older you are, the more advantage you have, because you know how to prompt, you know how to evaluate, you can bring so much knowledge in the process. If you are 20, you will too easily be happy with the statistical average AI is creating when you are not directing it. But on the other hand, I see that the majority of older and experienced people just hate it because it's so different to what they are used to work with in the past. And I'm trying to make it more transparent, and I think you can work with AI in a different way that the companies are teaching us. If you look at the economy, the big narrative is you save money because you can get rid of employees, or the employees you have can work faster, be more efficient, you can automate stuff. There is no alternative narration. And I think it's really important in the arts to show that it's possible to use AI not to get rid of artistic autonomy, but to support it. And that is possible. You can use AI to challenge you to challenge your ideas. You can present what you do to AI and can let it research. Is there something like this that already exists? Maybe better. Is my idea really so elaborate how I think? You can set up different critiques with a different background. Yeah, I could have an AI agent with your knowledge. I could have an AI agent with the knowledge of Bill Viola. I could have an AI agent with the knowledge of Francis Bacon. And then I can show the three of you my work and get the feedback. This is something that most people have not discovered for themselves. They use AI more like Google to answer questions, to get information, not to as a sparrings partner. 2.5 years ago, I was introduced to Wolfgang Petrik, the painter. At that time, he was already in his early 80s. And one of his former students, Jan Sobotka, who has been taking portraits of me at openings for 2 decades, just got me there. And I was very, very impressed. Yeah? It felt like a time travel. The studio of Patrick near Lützowplatz was like 2 19th century flats. Huge, with all the ornaments on the ceiling, and everything is full with art. Like paintings, sculptures, objects, stuffed animals. There was the windows were partially overgrown with plants. It was like a magical place, and I loved going there. And he was very much interested in AI, and it sparked a new interest in him. And he used it for sketches, for creating images that later, or image ideas that later he would finalize and change in painting. And I loved it because here you had someone, with over 80 years of artistic experiences that were not saying, I don't like it, it's not creative. And I think we should talk about what creativity is and how AI works later, but who was embracing it as a new tool, a new technology. And I've been there a couple of times for coffee, for talking, and there was always a plan doing something together. And then he wanted to have a big exhibition of his work and former students and friends, and wanted me to be part of it this summer. The sad thing is that he died early 26, which was kind of a surprise because he was totally present. Yeah, his mind was there, and his body also seemed to be okay. So after his death, I then created the work, or this kind of collaboration we never had time to in the lifetime. And I took photos of many of the paintings that are going to be shown in the exhibition. And for the first time, I created videos that don't look like film or photography, but that work with painting as a style. And what I did is creating kind of dream-like Odyssey, like a purgatory, where he himself, the painter, stumbles through. It's 20 fragments where he and the artistic world, the paintings, the creatures he painted, interact. Yeah, fight, dance, struggle, and you never know how it's going to continue. And I just loved working with this. And it is fragments. Somebody just asked me yesterday, it was the 4th person I showed it to, why so many fragments? And I said, I kind of, this is how I met Patrick. He was in his studio, and the whole studio was full of fragments. There were like, 50 paintings he was working on, at the same time, and some of them will never be finished. And I think this is something he always did. So these fragments seem to be connected to his character. And also yesterday I showed it to Jan, who got us in contact, and he was for me the most important person to get a feedback, because he has been a student. He has been knowing him for over 40 years. And he was very touched by it, and he also said that Patrick would have loved it, and I'm very happy that I got there. So this is something we can possibly just link to the video. It was opening up new doors, and what I like now with AI is also opening or walking down new paths for myself as an artist, doing stuff that I could not do in the past. Combining a really human figure in an environment that is painted would have been so much work in the past. Yeah, you would have, I don't know, CGI, but before CGI, you basically are in the 1930s in Dr. Caligari, and the whole backup is painted. But here I can just fuse it. And another example is a collaboration I do with musicians in Berlin. Crushed Now is a series of concerts by Gerrit Kashama and Verena Lercher, somewhere between very exploratory music from the last 100 years, starting with Xenakis, for example, to spatial audio electronics today. You never know what to expect. It's in the East Berlin radio station, Funkhaus, and I'm improvising on the theme of the evening. That means that the new wave of working for me is I generate images where I think they fit the topic, and then I animate them with a prompt that is asking for an audio performance. Like the last concert was on infrastructure. And I thought, well, the radio station, this 1950s building, this is the infrastructure where all of this is happening. So I take pictures of the furniture, of the architecture, of the vintage clocks on the wall, and they become the protagonists. They move and clash and expand, and all of this is creating an audio performance. Without this collaboration, I would have never thought of generating video as an audio performance, because the video I've done before were heavily, like the Francis Bacon, based on monologues. So this is what I like about AI. It opens up new ways of working or of thinking in my own artwork, but the topic has never changed. Friends that know me for many years say, I can tell it's your work. I'm interested in existential themes. And this is what connected me with Wolfgang Petrik. Yeah? He was born in 1934. I was born in 1970. I related to him as a father or an uncle. My father was older than Petrik. He was born in 24. And the artistic heroes that Petrik had are also artists, painters that had an influence on me. The artists that Petrik liked were Neue Sachlichkeit, Grosch, Dix, or symbolism. James Ensor was very important for him. So these are also artists that impressed me when I was a teenager, when I was interested into painting. I always had a love for painting. I wanted to become a painter, but later I realized I couldn't think like a painter. I was thinking like a draftsman. I was thinking in black and white, China ink lines. And my friends who were painting, they were more thinking in color, temperature, warm, cold spaces. And I was the person just creating everything out of lines. And from there, black and white, I went into black and white photography. But that love for painting was always there. And this interest in existential questions is something that I shared with Patrick. What I realized since the 90s, the contemporary art became more and more conceptual. The idea became more important than the craft. I remember in the late 90s going to Documenta, you saw what I saw as bad documentaries with people that had no idea how to edit, how to hold the camera still, how to shake. But the idea was about something. And I thought, this is bad art and it's bad documentary. Why is it shown here? But that became much stronger over the years. And everything needs to have an aboutness. And that aboutness needs to be about a contemporary problem that has been identified and people talk about and so on. And what interested me always and connects me to artists like Patrick or Roger Bellin would also be someone like this, is it's not that I say the problems we have today are irrelevant, but why do such problems return over and over again? What is the underlying deeper reason in the human condition? Yeah, that we have certain leaders, yeah, that war happens, that a certain dynamic between people is created. And this is why my approach is more timeless, more existential, and not political on a day-to-day level. I think it might be important to talk about my definition of art. Most people, if they see an artwork, ask themselves, what does the artist want to tell me? I really think it's nonsense. If I want to tell somebody something as an artist, I do it in an interview, I do it in an essay. For me, an artwork has a different purpose. The better question to ask yourself is, what does the artwork do to you? What kind of memories, emotions, thoughts are triggered? Are you attracted by it or are you appalled? Why? For me, a strong artwork is an invitation for an inner journey. And this is why I have big problems with the way that exhibitions and museums are structured for a long time. The normal way of visiting an exhibition is you go there, at the entry you have a big text by the curators that more or less tell you what this is all about. And then you walk through the exhibition and you try to find what you have read before. And I think this is just the opposite of how you should experience art. I would prefer to go into the exhibition without explanation, just trying to interact and ask myself, what do I see here? What does it do with me? And at the end of the exhibition, I would like to read that comment of the curator. Then it can add something and I can go a second time through the exhibition. But putting it at front, making it impossible for me to do my personal inner journey, and it forces me to look through the glasses of the curator. And I think this has gone terribly wrong. What I like about AI is that it forces us to think more deeply about terminology. The terminology that is used by AI, like intelligence, consciousness, creativity, what is human, philosophical questions now are asked by a much broader audience. And I was interested in creativity and creativity theory for over a decade. And there is not that much you find. Most creative theories are already mapped out in creation myths of the world. And then they go into two categories. One category is the creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. Like in the Christian Jewish tradition, there was nothing, just God, and then God creates the world. You have different religions that have a creation ex materia. There was matter before. Like in the Norse tradition, or if you go to the Australian Aboriginal beliefs or to Egypt, there is always something that dies and out of its bones and leftovers something new is created. In the Norse mythology, Zeus and his gang are killing a giant, and out of the cadaver of the giant, earth is created. And Margaret Ann Bowden was one of the first researchers in AI with a background in psychology and philosophy, and around 2000 she came up with a new version of this to explain how AI works. And up until today I have not found an alternative. I'm presenting her theory for 4 years now. I always ask, if you have something that is better, tell me. There's nothing. Sadly, Margaret Ann Bowden, who died last year, was not commenting on the events since 22 because she had dementia and then she died. So that was a loss. I really would have loved to hear her comments on it. What she says is creativity has 3 different categories. The first is combination. And this is what AI can do very well. It's combining given content, it's classical mashups, it's like Batman dressed like Barbie in pink. The second is exploration, and here it's a given structure. And this is what AI can also do very well, it's pattern recognition. And this is where an advancement in science will happen through AI. And then she said there is a third category that is not connected to given content and structure. It is a paradigm shift. It's a transformation. And it breaks rules. And her example was Marcel Duchamp's fountain, which, considering pissoir to be a ready-made sculpture, was something groundbreaking. And if you look at the structure, you realize that most of what people do creatively is combination. You have it in music, you have it in cooking, and exploration, looking more closely as details, can also be used, but not that often. And we all have a certain perspective, and the camera has a perspective, I have a perspective, and AI would have 360 degrees. And why I like this theory, it tells us what AI can do very well. It's a combination, it's the exploration of the structure. And that means we can outsource it. And then what kind of structure do we need for this? What is the workflow? And the big question mark is if we as humans focus now on the transformative part, on the paradigm shift, how do we get there? How do we do this? That is something that needs to be researched much more in depth, because that is the minimal part of creativity, and this is where we as humans should focus in the future. And there is, up until now, only one country and one institution that is doing it properly, and that's Norway. In Norway, in April 26, Mishmash was founded as a research center in collaboration with Norwegian universities, but also international partners. And it's only about the intersection between AI and creativity, in theory, in practice, and in transfer. And right now they are setting up over 200 PhDs on this. I would like to see this more often, and I'm happy I'm in contact with them, but I think this is where we need to focus on. What can we bring as humans into the collaboration between AI and humans, and what can we outsource, and how can we maintain and support creative autonomy? Okay, so this is an exhibition I did earlier this year at Metamorph Biennale for Art and Technology. This is not art, it has videos of that artist complaining about AI, it has portraits of artists with a two-liner showing what was the difference between their work and what AI can simulate. And here you have the Francis Bacon video, and I would like to show you in images now how it's done. So first was researching, that is Francis Bacon's studio, himself, how he looked, how he behaved, documentaries, his paintings. And then I started creating the monologue in interaction with ChatGPT, and that was more and more, working onto a certain structure and goal. And I work on this wherever I am. Part of it was created in trains or in planes. So this is a screenshot from my smartphone with all the notes. And then I was editing on my mobile. And later this is basically then the monologue for creating the storyboard and the images. And just creating images of him in his studio, doing all the different things, smoking, painting. And this is how it looks like. And the next step is animating those visuals, giving the different scenes numbers, putting the images in different folders, creating the scenes, animating the visuals. This was one of the different attempts of him screaming. The sound is on here right now. And then do I want to zoom into the video later, into the painting or not? I tried out many different things. Then it's the first edit and you realize I need more material, especially rearranging the scenes. It's like coming up with the idea, and shooting, editing is 30% of really working out an idea. And this is the example with the peak that became more and more important in different scenes. Here is the peak appearing in the hole in the floor. Here it's him smoking, burning, getting rid of the fire. All of this is just coming up in the workflow. Also, like the fox. The fox appears in the monologue. Yeah? He compares AI to a dead fox simulating life. So I had this stuffed fox being part of his studio, and him also being dressed like the screaming pope he painted. I found many sounds on freesound.com here looking for the fox. I created the song, the classical song in the background that is played from a record with another AI. And then edit continues. Later you need to unify the voices and to give them one sound. I consciously decided not to have his real voice because I don't want to create 100% deepfake. It just needed to be a British voice. And then all of this is put together again and upscaled to 4K. So all of this then later as an exhibition with the portraits of the artists. It's more or less the same. You create an exhibition layout like this in the museum space, and then the curators say, well, actually it's great to have Louise Bourgeois up there with a spider, but we can't get up that high. And can you only do 15 instead of 20? So this is then the festival's cut, and then it's put into practice, and that's it. What else can we get there? This is more technical stuff now. Yeah, this is all part from my presentations. Yeah. Because the topic is montage, I think it would be interesting to talk about prompting, how it works. It developed since 22 from a negotiation interface to an instruction interface, where first it was more like summoning ghosts. You say, I would like to go there, and then something might appear or not. Today it's really like directing, and I would like to show you my system of text prompts to show that it is also a montage of knowledge. That means you define a subject. What would you like to have? Man, woman, dog, cat. You need to specify, to solidify the subject, because if you just ask for a dog, it's a dog that is statistically dominant in the training data. You need to define what kind of. And then there's the emotional quality, vibe. Yeah, is the dog cute? Yeah, is he sad, anxious? What is the dog doing? Action, where is it happening? Location. And then it is about how the image is created. What kind of medium would you like to simulate? Each medium has a history of technology. In photography, you can define camera types, brands, lenses, film types. You can transfer this also to film. Then it's about the perspective. How do I look onto the scene? Is something happening in the foreground, middle ground, background? What colors would you like to have? What light would you like to have? What references? That could be artist names, it could be schools, it could be decades, it could be also different genres. An image of a dog will look different if it's documentary, fine art, advertising, wildlife. And then with boosters, you can try to make the quality look better or less. And the context is given with references and genre. And the beauty about working with AI is that you can say this is a montage of knowledge that you put into the prompt. And my knowledge in photography and in staged photography and video, I always decided on those parameters. And that is something I've done on location. Now I do it on the computer. And if you come from storytelling, you can say the first 5 categories, they tell the story, or this is the story, and then all those parameters tell the story. Yeah, this is the form, how the story is told. And this structure can be transferred to different media. That means if you are talking about moving image, it's a different medium. You are using video cameras, GoPro, drones, you are asking for different cameras, but the text prompt parameters are the same and they get more. With moving image, you talk about camera shots. How close is the camera to the subject? About camera motion, camera angles. Are you looking up or down to the subject, and camera speed? But the structure is the same. And if you then go to music, you will realize that that structure can also be applied to different categories in music. And that was leading me to the thought that what we do in generative AI is we work with latent space. Structurally, it's always the same. And if you have a knowledge in one of those medias, you are much better in prompting. So in the future, where everything is multimodal, either you work in teams, yeah, with an expert for image, for moving image, for sound, etc., or if you're just one person and you know just a little bit about music, you will get an AI to fill up what you don't know, but that knowledge will then be the statistical average. And I think that is the montage part. What most people get wrong in AI, they really think AI is doing collages. They take existing images and just put it together like elements, like you would have done 100 years ago with glue and with scissors. But AI is working more like Plato's archetypes. And AI has seen so many images of a table that it understands the archetype of a table. And then it depends on your prompt. If that table is round or oval or here like this shape, if it has 2 legs, 1 leg, 3 legs, 4 legs, the material, all of this is depending on your prompt. But this is the archetype that AI understands, and I find it very fascinating. 2 weeks ago, I had a presentation in the south of Germany in front of artists. It was a professional development on AI. And nobody needs to work with AI. You can still decide, I'm not going to do it. Stay an old school painter. But you can pick the part of the workflow where AI can help you. Some people use it for inspiration, like Wolfgang Petrik, yeah? Putting together images that he changed later in painting. Some of them use AI to analyze stuff. You can analyze everything you've done or something you've created, for example, to write an artist statement or text, or to become aware of what actually drives you as an artist. When I was teaching at the Art Academy in Melbourne 20 years ago, I've done that with students. It was more like a self-analysis. What artists did I love, influenced me, what media, what was my artistic output, why did I start, why did I stop, many write and stop, or play a music instrument and stop, and then put everything on a table, a mind map, and you will see connections. And this is what unconsciously drives you as an artist, and then once you see that, you can consciously get into these connections. I realized that when I was like 37. And what I try to do is to speed up the process with the students. And AI can do that very well. AI is excellent in pattern recognition. And this is something that can be used for education, for example. But as I said before, it can be inspiration, it can be analysis of data, it can be production, or it can be post-production. I'm using it for all four. Somebody else would pick 2 or 1 or none of it. So that is something that artists need to know. They have a choice, but they also need to know that mainstream will adopt it on grand scale. It's such a big technology, like the invention of electricity and the internet, and it's an enabling technology. When electricity was invented, we had no idea that this is going to record me with sound and image, and somebody else can watch it later. So AI will be able to create stuff that we can't even imagine now. And this is something that I think that as a human race, we want to happen unconsciously. You have it in all the narrations of mankind. Yeah, the story of Frankenstein or the golem, that humans want to create something that looks like them, like in the Old Testament. And then it goes terribly wrong. But it seems like we have this need, and this is why I think that search for artificial intelligence will not stop, will continue. But at the same time, most of it is driven by stories, by science fiction. And if you dig deeper, you realize most of the terminology used today is just marketing. If you question yourself, what is intelligence or what is creativity? You can study years for this at university and you will not find an answer. Wikipedia tells you intelligence is to use the knowledge you acquired to solve a new problem. Wikipedia also tells you creativity is to create something that is new and useful, valuable. But that means if I create something new that is useful, it has solved the problem with the knowledge I acquired before. So is intelligence and creativity the same? How are they connected? It opens up new questions. The big marketing term is AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and it's widely used to show AI can do everything we can do. But if you go down in the history of the terminology, it came from Google DeepMind, that at some point realized in their research, old AI could just do one task. Now with the language model, it's not specified anymore, it's more general. So the artificial general intelligence was a field of research. And then the first people just took it and said, it's here, it's invented, it can do whatever we want. But if I take it seriously and we talk about intelligence and how we measure intelligence, what would be the IQ of artificial intelligence? Is it 80, 90? Is it, 100, 110, which is the average? Or is it the high class 130 upwards genius intelligence? Nobody is able to define that. So you see that many of these terminologies are used by people that have never thought about psychology, sociology, philosophy, medicine. They come from tech and they come from sci-fi and they just want to use it because it sells. That's a very important aspect. And what I'm trying to do is to spread knowledge, for people to get an overview, to be able to understand what's happening, to make decisions, what they would like to use and to integrate, and also for societies to be able to shape what is happening. Because right now this is a battle between China and America, and there are not that many restrictions because it's a promise for power and for absolute power and warfare. That means if not just an AGI, the general intelligence is just the next step. And once you have this general intelligence, it can help create the super intelligence. So we as humans are not able to create a super intelligence, but we can create a general intelligence, and this is going to help us. The super intelligence, which is much smarter than we are. And then imagine a government like we have currently in America and China. Of course, they would like to have this super intelligence. And if you have this super intelligence, you can sabotage whoever is second. And they are not able to prove. So that is the promise of power, and this is why all the important questions for the use of electricity, water, copyright problems, how a society would function in an age with AI, unemployment, it's not important. Compared to the promise of power, it can be neglected. And if you open up that map to an audience, of course it's a downer, yeah. But I think it's very important to see all the aspects of AI, and I call myself a realist as an artist. I just love working with it. As a citizen of a democracy, I'm deeply concerned. And that doesn't mean that my impulse is to say it's all bad. I don't want to do anything with it. Because I'm involved, I can help educate others to get an overview instead of locking myself in my house. And I hope, it's my final word now, that this conversation or this talk I'm giving here is also helping others to see a new aspect in working with AI. And I think as societies we need to create alternative narratives on how to use AI, how to coexist, and how to create a culture of human AI collaboration. And I don't trust the companies in being able to do so.